Business Value podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their business on their terms. Our mission was born from the lessons we've learned from over 100 business transactions, which fuels our desire to share our experiences and wisdom so you can succeed. Now here's your host, CEO of Mastery Partners, Tom Bronson.
Hi, this is Tom Bronson, and welcome to Maximize Business Value, a podcast for business owners who are passionate about building long-term sustainable value in their businesses. I'm so excited this episode. I'd like to welcome our guest, Steve Meek. He's principal at the Fulcrum Group, an outsourced IT services firm here in North Texas. I was recently introduced to Steve by his business partner, David Johnson, who is a member of my Vistage peer group. Today, we're going to talk about information technology, or IT, and protecting your IT assets, a very important part of building and maintaining maximum value in your business. So welcome to Maximize Business Value, Steve. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me here today, Tom. I appreciate it.
So thrilled to have you on. Tell us a little bit about the Fulcrum Group.
Well, the Fulcrum Group, we provide outsourced IT services, back since 2002. So, and I've been doing this quite a while. And, we've got a little over 20 people, and we've got clients all throughout North Texas, and cover, as distinct as healthcare to local government to, all kinds of organizations. As things have evolved, technology keeps getting more and more important for organizations.
I was reading on your website this morning about the name, the Fulcrum Group, and I love that. Do you mind kind of sharing the story of how you guys came up with the Fulcrum Group?
Sure. So, I'm a nerd, so I read a lot. And I happened to be reading this article. I think it was Fortune magazine. And it was talking about the 6 simple machines and, how there's not really any new innovation, new applications of things. So it just started me thinking that, what we do in technology, or what we should be doing in technology, it's less about what's the actual tool and more about how you apply that tool, and likewise businesses that become successful. I think the article was originally around the iPod and about how the MP3 had been out for years, but it took Apple to come up with their spin, making it easy to use and the form and function and all those kinds of things to make it apply. And I just thought that was a great story for businesses in general, that don't just be another one of the herd, but think about how you can make yourself a little bit different to appeal to those people who have the greatest need for your services.
I love that. So simple tools, and it's just the application of those tools. I like it. So what is your background, and why did you and David start the Fulcrum Group?
Well, my background, actually, I went to college. I started off as a journalist, oddly enough, and at some point decided to go the business route. So my degree is actually in business, but Dave and I were actually partners in another consulting firm. So before we joined together, we were in a consulting firm for 5 years, an old Novel-based organization, if anyone remembers that anymore. But I think the big difference is that the firm that we were in was by and far I guess what I'd consider a product-based shop. They were very hardware-oriented, very, hey, if it doesn't help us sell some new physical piece of product, then it's not good for the business. And, my desire, my approach was to be more services driven. And so a lot more of what we do is focused around services. So I started the Fulcrum Group in 2002, and David eventually left that same company as well. And so he and I started hanging out together and partnering on some stuff. And we decided to get a trade show booth, and I'm on the left side in the trade show booth, and David's on the right side in the trade show booth. We bumped into someone who happened to know the two of us, and the guy's just like, "I don't get it," and we're like, well, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I don't get it. You've got your own card. You've got your own card. Why aren't you guys just one company?" And so it took someone just, calling us out and saying, "Hey, this doesn't make sense. If you guys are working together anyways, why don't you join together?" So we joined back together, and I've been going strong ever since.
I love stories of businesses that get started that way. It's just the simple person who asks the question, right?
It teaches you the power of the question.
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, it does. Well, let's jump into IT. To get off on the right foot, let's talk a little bit about the definition of IT, information technology. So, how is it that you define it, and has the definition kind of evolved over the years?
I would say absolutely. I think that I think just the consumerization of technology that people are much closer to technology than we've ever been. In the early days when I first got into IT, technology was that room that nobody went into except for a couple of people because the computer took up the whole room, and that's what IT was. And I think even if you think back then, people like us, people of that generation, were scared to go into that room because you weren't sure what you were going to do and what was going to happen. But with the modern day, it's just so incredible. People grow up with computers. You see babies on tablets and all kinds of things. And so, the typical user is not even the millennials anymore. The Gen Z or whatever you want to call them, they're raised on computers. They know more about some of the technology than we do. So, I think as a business owner, the challenge is, if you're hiring a new generation, if you're trying to keep up with things that don't think about technology as just the computer or the PC or any of those kinds of things anymore, it's your data, it's your applications, it's all of those things that go into how your business operates. And one of my clients, they have their own IT manager, and so we consult on big projects for them. And when I asked him what do you guys support, and he said, "Well, if it plugs into power, we support it." And I just thought that was a great thing. That, hey, it's not just limiting yourself to what's a computer, but the AV and all the other stuff that go into the network that they do. It just I think it helps you understand of how pervasive technology is, and in some cases we don't even think about it as being technology anymore. Now, I'm not saying we support microwaves or anything that plugs in like that, but for our clients, they might have a copier or some other thing that may not have been provided by us, but by nature of our relationship, we know how to integrate that into the network, how to help them troubleshoot issues, how to work with their vendor to resolve things. So we kind of have that kind of an approach to things that, anything that's on the network that touches your data or applications is typically something that we would get involved with.
It's so many times these days, anything that does plug into a wall is somehow connected to the internet, right? So
it is. It's actually a big, one of my certifications is around security, and that's one of the biggest concerns these days is, so many things are connected to your network that you don't even realize that could potentially be threats. There was a casino a couple of years ago that they got breached by a network attached thermometer in a fish tank. And you just wouldn't think that, that would give you the foothold into the environment. But that's typically what happens is all it takes is a foothold in and then to pivot into, other systems.
holy cow, that is crazy. Yeah, I've heard of all kinds of things. My wife and I always joke about the fact that we may be sitting out there. We do have one of those voice units, Alexa, sitting out in the family room. We'll talk about something, and next thing you know, I'm on browsing my website and I'm getting ads for whatever it was we were talking about. So I think she's always listening. So you would probably tell me I need to turn that off sometimes. So I have other friends that have said the same thing.
Well, I'm all about usability. So I would say decide where you want to put that and know that everything's being recorded. Everything you say is being saved up to the cloud. All that information can be used, not necessarily against you, but to sell to you. And I think that's the challenge, that, the huge pervasiveness of technology is that every time your smartphone is on, it knows where you're at, what you're doing, a lot of bits of information about you that can be mined and used to sell to you.
Wow. All right. So let's get back to business. What should business owners know about their IT or their technology?
Well, I think that, every business owner, I think the things that I said before, just your applications and data, those are the most important parts of your business. I think that, every time that there's every time you read the paper, there's some breach and other kind of thing. And I think we get desensitized to it, or we get overwhelmed by it. But I think it should be a very sensitive thing of every time there's an attack like that, the business owner, you don't have to know anything, but you can take that article and go to your IT guy, your IT provider, whatever, and just go, hey, would we have been protected against this? And so, I think what I said before about just knowing the power of a question, being able to go back and not feeling like you have to know all the answers or have to be an expert at technology to help shape where your technology is going and what it's doing for your organization and your team. Use that power of the question to find the right person to ask the right question and get the insight that you need. And, from there you decide, do I need to go left or do I need to go right? And that's all we're looking for as business owners is I just need just enough information to be able to make an informed decision.
Right. So, Tui, you mentioned about breaches and whatnot. And of course, the thing that hits the local news media are when Target gets breached or when Home Depot gets breached. And I've heard many, many times from small business owners, oh, they're not worried about me. The hackers aren't worried about me. They're going after these big targets. And I personally think that is the wrong approach. I love what your approach is when you read about that, to go and ask your IT people, am I protected against this in case this happens to me? I mean, would you agree that every business owner should be worried about their security?
Absolutely. There's the situations that I've been involved in where there have been attacks or breaches or someone came to us for help at the last minute, in a lot of cases, that owner was like, well, I didn't realize it would impact me like this, or I didn't realize this was the danger. I didn't quite understand. And I think that's the key there is to understand that, they may not, an attacker may not be specifically after you. In the case of Target, that's a great example because they may not have been targeting Target, but they were targeting an HVAC contractor who happened to work for Target. And so they got into this small company that got them into this big company. And I think that's, that to me, that's the lesson there is, just be aware of not just you, but who your clients are. One of the major organizations that helps us write a lot of the security thinking and logic, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. It's a government agency, but one of the things that NIST did to recently update their content is they went back and they wrote in a whole section for third-party risk. Who are the people in my supply chain that could impact me? And so in a lot of cases, if I was securing, for example, the Fulcrum Group, I wouldn't just look at me and what was going on in our network, but I would look at all my major suppliers. Who are my main vendors? What do they do for me? Who are the people who do support on my network? What are their policies and procedures? What are the tools and technologies that I use? What are the securities and vulnerabilities available in those? But because there is an interconnectedness of things that, we're always on at high speed, now more than ever, it's important to not just look at yourself and not just see yourself as an individual or your firm as kind of an island unto itself, but all of us are connected in these different ways that may not be readily apparent unless you're in technology in your organization. There's so many connections that we don't know and don't understand. And I think healthcare is one of those classic cases of where there's a lot of interconnectedness between applications and vendors that talk to each other. And now more than ever, they're having to go through and exercise a lot more diligence just to make sure that they're protected, and likewise their patients are protected, or their other vendors or business associates, covered entities, whatever. All of those. Everybody that's part of that web are protected as well.
So when we talk about kind of the risks around technology, every business owner should do things to reduce their risk. What are the things that you recommend a business owner do to protect their servers and their network and that kind of thing?
Well, I think that being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, it takes a special kind of person. I think you have to be naturally curious and be able to use the power of the question, whatever business you're in. We joke in our business that we're in a slightly different business every 2 to 3 years. And I'd venture to say that every business owner out there at some point slightly evolves their business or makes a change based on some sort of questions that they're asking. And I think, what I said before about the power of the question is a powerful thing. If you're an owner and you're talking to your IT guy, you don't have to know the answer, but you can ask real open-ended questions and get some real insight into what's going on in your network. And in some ways, the exact same way you manage your business through KPIs, through metrics and those kinds of things, you can go to your IT guy and ask him, hey, I saw this issue out there. Is there a way to measure that? As a business owner, you don't have to be the expert and know the answer to that. But by asking that question, you challenge that person to really think about, what's the best way to do that. And, if you're managing your sales team, your accounting, you've got your numbers that you're following, from the security point of view, you can ask, hey, is there a way we can track how many patches we have or need? And track patching percent, or how many incidents occur in our network. And, you can just measure number of incidents, or what your uptime is, what your success of your backups are. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different numbers out there. Some of it will depend on who provides your IT and how they track things, what tools they have, but getting some insight into those things, being able to consistently execute, that's not just good business. Or not just good technology, that's good business. And, I think that having a sense of what those metrics are, it doesn't matter what it's going to be from year to year, but knowing and having a number, being able to measure against that number as an owner, then you can get a sense of, are we doing better? Are we doing worse?
Ask really good questions. I like that. Are there some things that you wish more business owners understood about their technology?
Yeah, honestly, for me, I think it's just that people felt more comfortable with their technology. For all the challenges with COVID and, what the pandemic has brought to us, the thing that I absolutely love about the mentality is it's forced every owner to accept the impact of technology on their business and realize that by their understanding it, there's a lot more they can get out of it. By them understanding it, they can see new possibilities. And, the thing that I wish owners knew was, understand more about the value of centralization. When you've got centralized technology, it gives you power to control everything, from security to usability to manageability, whatever. I think that I wish more owners understood the value of standardization, that when you standardize across your user base or across your technology, you lower your cost of your technology costs. So if you know that all of your 50 employees, that 10 fit into this group, 10 fit into this group, and 30 fit into this group, then you can make some adjustments based on, let's standardize the application every machine has. Let's standardize the hardware. These guys need less, these guys need more. And I think a lot of times, there's so many technology challenges for a business. It just seems like it steals all your budget, but that's because we're not applying granularity to it. We don't know the standards, so we treat everything the same way. And if every little issue is a trip to the emergency room, it gets real expensive quick. And so I think the lesson is to understand how to get that granularity through establishing those standards. And then you can put a Band-Aid where it's deserved, go to the hospital where it's deserved, and go to the emergency room where it's deserved, because each of those has a higher different, cost, value, return, whatever it happens to be. So for the owner, I think it's just taking a step back and not being afraid of the technology. It's there to help you. It's just a tool. Take advantage of the tool by understanding how to use it and when to use it.
Awesome. Great stuff. We're talking with Steve Meek. We will take a quick break and back in 30 seconds.
Every business will eventually transition, some internally to employees and managers, and some externally to third-party buyers. Mastery Partners equips business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their businesses on their terms using our 4-step process. We start with a snapshot of where your business is today. Then we help you understand where you want to be and design a custom strategy to get you there. Next, we help you execute that strategy with the assistance of our amazing resource network. And ultimately, you'll be able to transition your business on your terms. What are you waiting for? More time? More revenue? If you want to maximize your business value, it takes time. Now is that time. Get started today by checking us out at www.masterypartners.com or email us at info@masterypartners.com to learn more.
We're back with Steve Meek, principal at the Fulcrum Group, an outsourced IT services firm here in North Texas. So for our listeners, this episode is being recorded during mid-November 2020. We know that it has an unlimited, it's an evergreen shelf life. So I wanted to give sort of some context for time when this is recording. It's during, of course, the COVID pandemic. Many businesses have sent their workers home to work. How does working from home change things in regards to IT, or does it make any difference at all, Steve?
Absolutely. I think, with COVID, there's, I guess, a lot of different things that happened, but, some were operational, some were structural. When I think of the operational changes, one of the hallmarks of good technical design is plan the work, work the plan. Come up with a design, make sure that it fits right, and then put everyone into the right spot as close to the data as possible. But what you had with COVID was you had a rapid change operationally of everybody of, hey, go do this. We're putting in this tool, or we're asking you to do this. So you're missing out on training. You're missing out on a lot of the operational aspects of setting up a good design, a good plan for your technology, and then having everyone follow it. And then structurally, I think that, the challenge is, when you work at home, you're subject to whatever the home environment is like. And, on the network or at your business, in an office, everything is behind a firewall. It's got following certain policies. You verified what's on the network or, what software is in use. But, at the home, none of that's true for the most part, I would suspect. You've got PS4s, you've got Alexa, you've got home doorbells. You've got all these devices that are on the network that aren't as secured or protected like business class commercial devices are, that could open you up to compromise. And every home office that people work from is a way to get into the network. There's a saying in security that you're only secure as your least secure connection. So any home user can get an infection on their machine, come back to the office, their laptops behind the firewall, and infect the entire network. And I think that a lot of people don't realize of how little control you have, because you've got unknown devices at unknown locations with no physical controls, suspect user, suspect patching, all of those kinds of things. It's security. As a security certified practitioner, that just scares the crud out of me, because everything we fought for years so hard to, all these protections we put in place, it bypasses a lot of them. That being said, a lot of those get bypassed anyway. It's just the nature of, cloud and Office 365. A lot of the Office 365 things are, by being in the cloud, readily available, could potentially punch holes in, a lot of the security setups for your environment. So, I think that COVID forces you to take a step back and reevaluate all those security things. The first part of the year, absolutely, we got to get operational. If I can't take care of clients, I can't operate. But hopefully in Q3, Q4, you've been able to invest the time into going back and having your security person or security people look back through your security and say, hey, let's plug all the holes that the new holes that we created, and getting operational and being able to take care of clients. Because I guarantee you, there's a lot of holes that are there that you're not even aware of and not even thinking about because you've been going so fast.
Well, and I think that is a solid piece of advice. Back in March, April timeframe, when it was, we're being ordered to send everybody home, and we were, instead of ready, aim, fire. I mean, it was ready, fire, 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 fire. And it's a great piece of advice for business owners to step back now and evaluate, okay, where are all the touch points, and have your IT team, whether it's in-house or outsourced, to go out and make evaluation of where the holes are, because that it sort of does exponentially increase the number of opportunities, I guess, there are to have holes in your network. It's that is great stuff. We're before we wrap up today, what else do you see in the future of technology, Steve?
Well, I think a lot of the innovation, I harp on applications a lot, but our applications of data. In the old days, I used to see things in the vein of it's got to be a server, it's going to be located here, blah blah blah. But I think there's just kind of I think it was the book Upstream. Talk a lot about how everything's moving upstream, and so many times we react to problems after they occur, as opposed to prevent the problems before they're occurring. And what I'm seeing is just a lot of efforts towards integrating apps, and either through APIs or just using more services instead of actually having a server. I think Office 365 is a great example of that. Application programming interfaces, APIs. That's how healthcare has their applications talk to each other and share data back and forth. But even databases, in a lot of organizations, you're able to connect two applications together or share data to get more input, or even use technology called business intelligence to extract more detailed information out of your data. I think that the past you'd mentioned to me about your use of Alexa, and I think that's a perfect example of how using data, business intelligence, you're able to mine data, use the GPS on somebody's phone to see they're in a particular area, look up a search on cross-reference that with the search they just did in Google, and you can guess that somebody's at Best Buy looking at a particular device, and hey, I want to court that person to try and sell them my device, which is complementary. But just the amazing power of technology and how it's able to mine data, for a business owner. That's a large scale thing involving Google technology. But I think for the small business owner, there's a lot of tools now that you can reference to either get your applications to connect to each other, to mine that data, to understand where your business is, or other kinds of things. But just the intelligence that's out there that you don't always have to go back and look at your P&L and try and figure out what your gross profit is, or what your net profit is, or any of those things like you used to, because of some of the, instead of looking at that reactive data, you're able to get some more frontline upstream data that helps you understand the leading indicators of what I should be doing and where I should be going.
Well, that is a great example of putting technology to use. I love the Fulcrum Group. Tell us what sets the Fulcrum Group apart from other outsourced IT businesses.
Yeah, I think that that perspective. I think that we see what we do as more of a process than a technical skill. So part of our raison d'etre, the way that we do things, we call it our star power. How we take a step back, look at all the technology, try and get alignment. We actually have this huge checklist that for our clients every 3 months. We take our huge checklist and go out to all of our clients and kind of compare where they are relative to that checklist, and arm them with the information of, hey, here's where you are, but here's some things that other organizations are doing to improve their business, or organizations in similar situations are adding competitive advantage, or moving faster, or adding mobility, or whatever it happens to do. But just taking that process, that checklist of all these great ideas, we're continually updating it, but we're going out to all of our clients just to remind them of, hey, it's been 3 months since we've talked, but this still isn't something you're taking advantage of, or this is a configuration we could modify, or something that we could change. But, just having a process-based approach to technology, as opposed to, I don't know all the organizations that are out there, but I know that some organizations see outsourced technical support as just that, just technical support. If there's a problem, I'll show up. If there's a problem, I'll answer the phone, probably, possibly. But within technology, there's four different types of work. It's more than just the unplanned work. There's a business-driven projects. There's change management. And then the technical projects. And so between those four different types of work, we're trying to spend more of your budget in the business-driven projects. Hey, it's great that we update your servers. It's great that we patch. It's great that we respond to issues and that we update things. But we want to help you identify those business-related projects that are going to be value add, as opposed to just taking up the costs. And I think that's where organizations struggle with IT support or outsourced IT, is they spend all their time into that low value quadrant of just responding to issues when they come up, and don't invest enough time or thinking or thought or effort into, hey, what's going to add value to our business? What's going to make it easier for clients to do business with us? What's going to make us able to respond quicker, understand where the client's at, be more aligned with our client, whatever it happens to be. But just investing in the wrong of the four different types of IT.
Yeah, so many business owners that I talk to are very reactive when it comes to their IT. They don't have those proactive conversations. I love that about the Fulcrum Group. You take a much more proactive approach, sort of like a quarterly business review. And one thing I do know, since our listeners know that I've owned 100 businesses in my career, that someone needs to hold the CEO accountable too. And I'll know about a risk and learn about a risk, but don't take action on it. And I need to be reminded of it, right? So holding the leadership accountable for making sure that they are dealing with some of those risk areas and being more proactive. I just love the way you guys operate. So one last business question here. Of course, this podcast is all about maximizing business value. Steve, if there was one thing that you could say is the most important thing that you would recommend any business owner do to build value in their business, what would that be?
Wow. I think it really goes back to taking control of their data. Of all the technology that you have in your business, the only thing that's really going to separate you is that data. If you're looking for merger, acquisition, or something of longer term value, a lot of your corporate value is locked up in what's in your data. Either they're buying your list of customers, they're buying your technical knowledge, they're buying all the intellectual property, your specialty designs, whatever it is. But realize if that's all your value, you've got to protect it. You've got to mine it. You've got to understand it. You've got to be able to control it. You've got to be able to protect it. All of those kinds of things. It all hinges around your data. But a lot of times when I talk to owners, they just don't know where the data is. Hey, I know I've got servers, but I don't know where my data is at. Or I think I've got servers, but your data could actually be stored in the cloud, on OneDrive or some other shared application. When we take on a new client, one of the things that we do is we try to find where is all your data located. And in some cases, you've got like a really super, let's say like a sales manager, someone who's using some application that the owner didn't even know about, but only through our questioning and process do we find out that, hey, this data that's really critical to the organization, their CRM, isn't even on their servers. It's something the sales guy is doing because there were issues and he wanted something that he could control. And, he's not trying to do anything wrong, but just understanding where that data is and where it lives. That's so important to the owner, because as you go through your due diligence process and they try and track those things down, it may find out that it's not where you expect, or you don't have control, or maybe through the M&A process somebody leaves and you lose access to that data. All of those kinds of things are things that they'll get found out in the due diligence process, but you'd rather know that before you go through that process. So knowing where your data is, where it resides, how it's protected, how it's controlled, all of those kinds of things.
Get your arms around your data. That is great advice for every business owner. So our longtime listeners know This is episode 34, I think, that I always ask a bonus question. So, Steve, here it is. And everybody's been waiting. Our longtime listeners wait all the way to the bonus question. And so here it is. What personality trait has gotten you into the most trouble through the years?
Personality trait got me into trouble. I would say for me that the desire to always be right. As an owner, you have to be able to listen, you have to be able to interact and talk. But just have this, I'll do whatever research, I'll stay up late. There's been times where I've worked, 48 hours straight, those kinds of things, just to be able to get to, to the right answer. And I think that while that's a laudable skill, and the wanting to be right is a great thing. I think sometimes that gets me in trouble by pointing out that someone's wrong when it really isn't even necessary, or calling someone to the floor for something when it might damage the relationship or whatever. But I think I've always been challenged by always wanting to think I'm right, and being willing to commit my every fiber of my physical and mental being to go out to try and make sure that I'm right, sometimes works against me.
I totally get that. I'm very much the same way. There was a great movie back in, I think it was the late 80s or the early 90s, called Broadcast News, where Holly Hunter plays a news producer, and at some point her boss, who is like executive vice president of the network, looks at her and says, "It must be nice to be right all the time." And she looked right back at him and says, "No, not really."
Well, actually, it's funny you say that. I started college as a journalist. I wrote in high school, and did a lot of writing, and so I think that's part of that fact checking. Always wanting to have the right bit of information is one of those things that is good in certain situations, but in the world of business, in the world of consulting, and other kinds of things, it's I guess letting things slide might be a skill that I need to work on.
Yeah, there you go. How can our viewers and listeners get in touch with you, Steve?
Well, you can always get a hold of us through the Fulcrum Group. Our main number, it's answered live 8 to 5. Usually, people can get through to me. My email, steve@fulcrumgroup.net. I may not respond instantly, but to the thousands and thousands of emails that I get from having the same email for 20 years, I pretty much respond to every email that I get. And, I've got a lot of people that I've talked with over the years where, I don't mind answering general questions related to technology via email, for free, just as, I learn something anytime I coach, mentor, train, educate. So, I'm always like explaining things to people. And if I had a superpower, I think that's my superpower, being able to break things down and explain things to people in a way that I hope they believe they understand better than they did before. So always feel free to reach out and ask that question, and I'll answer as best I can. And, if some other kind of relationship comes out of it later, that's great. But, I just, in the end, I just love helping people.
Well, if you've got to have a superpower, that is a great one to have. This has been so much fun. Thanks for being my guest today, Steve.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. It's been, like I said, I really enjoy being able to interact with people, and, I always learn something more. And, all of our clients over the years, I've said, hey, even if I show you 10, 20, 30 things, when you become a client of us, I'm going to learn 1 or 2 or 3 things from you. So, that's why I love what I do. It's nothing better for a continual learner than continual learning.
Be a lifelong learner. Be a lifelong learner. I'm a huge fan of that. So you can find Steve at their website. Look him up at the Fulcrum Group. He's on LinkedIn, of course. And as always, you can reach out to me, and I will be happy to make a warm introduction to Steve Meek and the Fulcrum Group. This is Maximize Business Value podcast, where we give practical advice to business owners on how to build long-term sustainable value in your business. Be sure to tune in each week and click the follow us button wherever you found this podcast. And finally, join our community by signing up for our weekly newsletter right on our website, www.maximizebusinessvalue.com. masterypartners.com. That's master with a Y. And so until next time, I'm Tom Bronson, reminding you to get your arms around your data and your infrastructure while you maximize business value.
Thank you for tuning into the Maximize Business Value podcast with Tom Bronson. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition on their terms. Learn more on how to build long-term sustainable business value and get free value-building tools by visiting our website, www.masterypartners.com. That's master with a Y, masterypartners.com. Check it out.
That was perfect. I wouldn't make any changes on that.